Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Convery, the podcast where we explore the journeys and experiences with talented individuals from all different backgrounds and careers. Today, I'm talking with filmmaker extraordinaire Billy Nawrocki. Billy's journey in the world of film and media began at Providence College, where he earned his BA in English with a minor in film studies. Since then, his career has been nothing short of a thrilling adventure in the world of visual storytelling. From launching a startup sports network in Connecticut to founding his own production company, D.I.Y or Die Productions, Billy has always been at the forefront of creating compelling content. His talent for storytelling has found a particular chilling home in the horror genre, with his short films and screenplays earning accolades at numerous notable festivals and competitions. But Billy's skills aren't limited to scares. He's also edited three feature films that have been distributed by companies like Gravitas Ventures and Breaking Glass Pictures, showcasing his versatility as a filmmaker. Most recent, Billy made waves as the lead editor for the Bleacher Report's branded content team Playmaker at Warner Brothers Discovery. There, he crafted campaigns for an impressive roster of clients, including Facebook, Netflix, Adidas, and many more. Now he's returned to the world of freelancing, lending his expertise to brands like Vogue, Samsung, Cartier, and Google. If that wasn't enough to keep him busy, Billy is also currently in pre-production for his debut feature film set to shoot in the fall of 2025. When he's not immersed in the world of filmmaking, you can find him in Peekskill, New York, where he lives with his wife, two daughters, and trio of cats, who I'm pretty sure can make a plenty inspiring story for his storytelling. Billy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Super exciting to see you and catch up with you after a few years. And
Yeah, great seeing you.
you too, you too. I know we did a little bit of a film production back in the day.
We
Um,
did. I don't know if I knew what I was doing back then, but
no, you did.
I
You did
think it
great
came
back
out well. I was definitely kind of just going with it and
then.
saying yes that I could do everything and, just trying to make money,
Yeah. Yeah, I
trying to
think you
pay my
did
Brooklyn rent.
there you go. I think you did a great job.
Oh, great.
So,
Great.
starting kind of rapid fire questions just to get us going and for people to get to know who you are. What's
hmm
your superpower?
I think problem solving,
Problem
which didn't
solving.
really occur to me until I, became an editor and realized that editing is just problem solving.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, we talk about all the senses, but I always like to ask this question. What's your favorite smell?
Probably like cinnamon,
Cinnamon?
like clove, cinnamon, like spices like that. I
Mm.
love the smell of yeah, like cinnamon.
And it's that time of year where that's kind of all
Yeah.
around us, isn't it?
hmm
Yep. No, that's a great smell. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
Um, I had a friend in college, and I don't know if this was a good compliment. I don't even know if this was a compliment, but I think he meant it in a good way. He's basically, he said, we're talking about something, and I was just defending someone, and he said, man, Billy, he's like, you could defend even the devil. Or like find something. He said like you could find something good to say even about the devil, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of nice, I guess. Like it's like a positive. Like I can see the good in everything and
Yeah, it
understand
is.
why people maybe are the way they are if they're not like a desirable person or a nice person.
Yeah.
That
No,
was interesting.
that's an interesting one. That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah.
I like it. What's your go-to snack?
Um. Kind of like smell. I think it's like a cinnamon graham cracker type thing. Like I have two little girls, so like that's what we have around here is those kind of like little
Okay, yeah.
graham cracker type stuff. So like I can eat like, a package of graham crackers if I'm not
Are
careful.
they like little teddy bear shapes and different things?
They could be
Or
any,
just
they
graham
could be any,
cracker?
they could be any size, any shape. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
eat them. Yeah.
Okay. When thinking about, it doesn't matter if it's high school or university or college, but what was your favorite subject?
Probably English,
Mhm.
I think I don't think I was thinking about what I wanted to do when I was in school.
Yep.
It was really until my sophomore year of college that I was like, oh, I got to declare something, and I kind of like English. But I will say my favorite class I took in high school was a forensics class,
Really?
which was a very interesting like elective you could take,
That's kind of
um,
cool.
which kind of plays into the horror thing, I
I
guess.
was gonna say, I
Doing
think
like
there's a little bit of influence
yeah,
there.
we were doing like blood stain analysis and stuff like that, and like they would set up like crime scenes.
Okay.
I
All
really
right.
like that stuff. Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
We all start somewhere. People answer this question differently about whether it's a paid job or unpaid. I don't really care either way, but tell us what your first job was, if you remember.
My first job, I was working at a surf shop called Ride a Wave Surf Shop in Mesquamacut, Rhode Island.
Okay.
And yeah, I was just like working the register, but it became one of these things where the owner, at the time, I was actually working there with my girlfriend. We both got just up there.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'd work together. But he trusted the two of us to actually start like going to they have a thing in Orlando called the Surf Expo, where all the big surf brands would get together and do this big convention and, basically try to get shops to buy,
Yeah.
purchase their latest stuff to sell that season. Um, so like it became more than just, ringing people out. It became like
Wow.
you'd be like, okay, what kind of surfboards are we gonna, sell next year? And what kind of skimboards and what kind of bathing suits? And, he kind of trusted us with what was cool,
That is
um,
cool.
which is,
He gave you a shot, which is cool. I love that because
yeah, yeah,
everyone needs a start, you know?
yeah. And it's, and we were like, we were back in the early 2000s. That was like this surf culture. And
Yeah.
my brother's 17 now, and I think I showed him like a hat I had from when I was younger, and it said Billabong, and he's like, "What's Billabong?" And I was like, "You don't know what Billabong is?" He's like, "No," and I was like, "They don't wear Billabong anymore in school?" And he's like, "No, nobody wears Billabong." Or I was like, "Oh, this is like
The
not the
cool.
style anymore." Yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah. Did you actually learn how to surf too? Or do you know
Yeah,
how to
yeah, and
surf?
I've surfed since I was younger.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Well,
I
that
don't
makes
go as
sense
much
too.
anymore, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that about you. That's pretty cool. If you had to describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
This is cheating because I said I didn't know, and I was like, I don't know how I would describe myself. So I asked my wife, and she said visionary.
That's a very
And
good
I was like,
one.
well, you're giving me a lot of credit.
No, I
And
could
she's
see
like
that. That's
you're
awesome.
visionary. And I was like,
Yeah, you
okay,
are. You
I
gotta
guess
be
when I
with what you
try.
do. You gotta be. You gotta be.
That is true. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you know what, visionary. It just sounds like such a loaded word that you know,
Hey, I say run with
but I
it.
guess, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. So that's her word. That's not my
Billy the Visionary. I think we do that.
visionary. Yeah.
All right, let's go back a little bit to the beginning. We were talking a little bit before we started the podcast, but how did your time at Providence College, studying English, film studies, how did that influence your career and kind of what you're doing now?
So when I got to Providence, I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
Fair.
I'll be honest, I didn't even like, it's a private Catholic school, and I'm not a religious person even, I just it was in Rhode Island, and I really liked Rhode Island. And to be honest, the thought process was I got into URI and I got into Providence, and my dad was like, I think Providence is a better school. You should go there. And then I took
Okay,
out a bunch of loans
there you
and stuff
go.
off. But I mean, I loved it. The experience was great. But I I took the yeah, I started taking film classes for the film minor that had just I think it was like new at the time. I was there from 2008 to 2012. And the film minor was new, and I met a professor there named Father Ken Gumbert.
Okay.
And Father Gumbert actually taught the Farrelly brothers, who directed like There's Something About Mary, Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
They have one that just recently came out called Ricky Stenicki. Um, and if you watch all their films, they usually take place in Providence, because they love to rep their home city. Um, so he was a great professor. I'm still really close with him. I still visit his classes every year just to talk about my experiences in film and what I do. Um, but yeah, he really drove a lot of that passion into me, and kind of convinced me it's the road I should follow with my career. And I also had another professor there that he was actually an adjunct professor that sadly passed away soon after I graduated. But his name was Ron Tipp, and he was a producer on like Space Jam. He was actually an animation producer. Like he was like kind of like I couldn't tell you exactly, but basically
That's
he was
cool.
like the liaison between like the live action and the animation. Um, and one of my good friends, his name's George Lucas, which is very funny. It's not George Lucas like Star Wars, but
Okay.
um, but we both, had this guy Ron as a professor, and he really taught me a lot about screenwriting and
Mhm.
honing that craft. So between those two professors, that really, I think gave me the confidence I needed going out into the world. And
Interesting.
yeah, I'm from Connecticut, and Connecticut doesn't really have a big film world.
Hmm.
Nowadays it's a little bigger, but it was kind of like a lot of the jobs you would find in Connecticut were like wedding photographers and wedding videographers, and you know, it's these small commercial companies that weren't really doing kind of the fun storytelling that I wanted to do.
Okay.
So, they also kind of convinced me, you should go to New York, you should go to LA. Um, and I went to LA on a trip, and I really didn't like it, to be honest.
Hmm.
It just was a whole different vibe than New York and New England, and so I ended up in New York with my girlfriend, and now she's my wife, and that
That's
was kind of
awesome.
like, yeah,
That's awesome.
ended
That's
up.
awesome. So I love that. And I love the influence of the positive influence of the teachers and professors that have come into your life and, shared some of these ideas with you and you learn from them. It's super important to have mentors and people that believe in you and lift you up. So that's super cool.
Yeah.
Um, you've worn many hats from editor, director, screenwriter, and now you found, I guess, your success or even continuing with all of your success in the horror genre. What exactly drew you into the horror genre and that area of focus for you? Just curious.
Um, I think really it was watching horror films with my dad when I was younger.
Okay.
No, you can't see it, but in this interview in the video, I do have an office behind me, and there's they're not there right now. You can't see them, but I have an American Werewolf in London poster,
Love that.
and a Jaws poster, and those are two of my earliest film memories. And being a parent now, I'm kind of like, I want to show my daughter these kind of movies, but she's only 3, so I can't do that. But I'm like, you know what? I remember when I was like 5 or 6 seeing these movies, and I turned out okay, I think.
There you
Uh,
go.
but really, I think it is one of those things where, like, you just kind of tell me, he's like, these are just movies, these are
Yeah,
just stories. They're not real, and that's kind of what I think now. I'm like, I tell my daughter if she sees something that's kind of scary on the TV, I'm like, this is just a story. They're telling a story. And I was like, and I like to be scared.
yeah,
She's like, you like to be scared, Daddy? And I'm like, yeah, because what's really great about movies that are scary is that I'm safe and I can feel scared, but I'm safe. I'm on the couch. It's like going on a roller coaster.
yeah,
Maybe not the best because roller coasters can have accidents, but you know, for the most
yeah,
part, you're safe and you're in an environment where things will be okay. And it's and it sometimes feels good to be scared. And she's like, oh, that's trying to wrap her brain about around it. But really, that's what kind of drew me. As I
yeah.
grew up, like I'd be like the weirdo that was sitting in my basement watching horror films alone, like trying to make it as scary as possible. And
Lights off and everything, right?
yeah, yeah, and like, there's without getting too deep into like personal stuff, there's also just a lot of stuff in my family going on that, in a way, looking back, I kind of draw from when I write stuff now of, stuff with addiction in my family and
Hmm.
mental illness. And I think subconsciously some of those things that were happening at the time when I was
Sure.
younger that I didn't really realize were happening, but I knew something was off. I think those all I think
Play into
horror
it.
also kind of like was a blanket, like a security blanket,
Yeah.
like if I can handle this, I can handle anything else that's going on in my life.
Yeah. Really
Um,
interesting parallel there. That's cool. Yeah. Interesting. Um, you also experienced launching a startup sports network. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that came about and the challenges? And
yeah. So when I first got out of graduated from PC, I was actually a lifeguard for the 4 years I was there, and then I had like a final year of basically that summer out of college. I I finished my last year as a lifeguard at one of the beaches in the same place where that surf shop was in
Yeah.
Squamish, Rhode Island. Um, and I went back to Connecticut, and like I said, there wasn't like a lot of stuff going on, and I just started kind of cold calling places, and I found one company that I'll be honest, I forget the name now, but I just walked in there and I said, "Do you guys need an editor?" And
Hmm.
the owner said, "No, we're actually a visual effects house." I was like, okay. And I didn't really have much editing background, I did my own stuff. I did my own little films in school and like, but I did not know anything about, like editing for someone else really. And he's like, "Well, I'm going to give you the contact information. There's a place that's opening up called Back Nine Network, and it's in Hartford, Connecticut, which is one town over."
Yeah. That's where
And
I
I said,
went to school.
"Oh, really? Okay. What
Yeah,
school did you
University of Hartford.
go?" But there you go. So
Yeah.
there were people that were,
Yeah.
coming right out. I remember some of my coworkers were from University of Hartford. So I went over there, and the the guy I talked to, his name was Robert Abbott, and he was big at ESPN, and he had, I think, jumped ship from ESPN to do the video work for Back Nine Network, and it was like a team of like like 12 people maybe.
Okay.
And it was really like the C-suite, these
Yeah.
guys that were in the C-suite, and then it was like two talent, and then like maybe two business guys, and then there was, they hired me, and I was working under this guy Robert, and he basically was like, "Do you know how to edit?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, we also have to shoot things. Can you shoot things?" And I was like, "Sure." And I basically ended up kind of doing everything for their YouTube channel, which again, at the time, this was like 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
Like there was no, it's funny because looking back, I'm kind of like, it's so not easy, but like you could figure out how to sell content, and like, and get people, brands to want to sponsor your content. But like at the time, like nobody was thinking about like monetizing YouTube and these other
Hmm.
video, these video places. So like, we were trying to basically just get we were focused on views, which is, obviously important, but um it's just not like it is now. It's just such a different world now than it was back then, and people were just trying to figure it out. Um but like kind of the funny story I always talk about when it comes to editing is that one of my first days there, they had gotten all this footage from this I think it was Pebble Beach the golf course.
Yeah.
And they're like, Pebble Beach wants to um they're going to invest like a couple $1 million in us possibly, but they have this, we shot all this stuff over there, and it's like an instructor showing something off with golfing. I don't know if I mentioned that, by the way. This is a golf network. Back Nine Network, it's a golf network.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
that's an important thing to add.
That's
Their
okay.
yeah, their pitch was
Right.
that they are the if the cooking channel is about cooking and Food Network is about the culture of
Hmm.
food, we Back Nine Network was going to be like the Food Network of golf. We weren't going to be the golf channel where it's like you turn on the golf channel and they're showing you how to, hold
Yeah.
on to the club. This is like you don't even have to like to golf, but you like to travel, you like to go to Pebble Beach, you like to, so that was like they're trying to target a younger demographic, and like, you know, literally like even like inner city kids that might
Hmm.
not don't have the opportunity because they think it's like a white man's sport,
Hmm.
or rich white man's sport. So that was like the pitch. Um, so anyways, I get all this footage, and they're like, "We need it tomorrow." And I was like, "I don't even know. I barely edit, I edit my own stuff. I'm never on like a time crunch." So I like threw this thing together, and I thought it was great. And the next day, and they took it, like literally it was like the CFO, grabbed the video off the hard drive, and he was like, it's like, "I'm gonna send it over to them now." And I was like, Maybe you should watch it." And he watched it, and I got this really angry email. He goes, "Do you see this part at, whatever, 20 seconds? He goes up with a driver in one shot, and then when it hits the ball, it's like a sand wedge, and then it comes back up and it's a whole different club." And uh-oh. I was like, sorry. I was working really fast, and but that like taught me like
Mm.
one, the big thing of editing is attention to detail, and like, it sucks sometimes, but like even if you have an hour video, you should watch the whole thing down before you send it out. You should look at your exports and look at everything you've done to make sure that whatever you're sending along to someone looks the way you want it to look. Um, so those were the two key things that I learned at that job were attention to detail and speed.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I was there basically till from 2013 to 2015. And while I was there, they like launched on DirecTV. They went from, the 13 of us to like 50 to 60 employees. And um, yeah, and they were kind of subsisting on like an advertiser money and revenue and private investment.
Hmm.
And they kind of just ran out of money, it seems. That's the only way I can. I
Yeah.
kind of I was able to get like a little insider because I'd been there for so
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
Still kind of kept away because I was only a 24, 25-year-old at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but they did eventually while we were on our way. Sorry, I'm getting little notifications here.
No problem.
While I was, they were like launching the network. They actually bought a golf, um, what do you want to call it? A golf GPS app called Swing by Swing.
Okay.
And Swing by Swing, sorry, I'm just putting myself on Do Not Disturb. Swing by Swing, uh, basically they folded into Swing by Swing because
The
Backhand
app was
went
going.
bankrupt. They went to Swing by Swing, and now Swing by Swing's like really a really successful company. And I think if you go on their website, you could probably find like old broken web page links to like some of the back nine stuff. But the whole thing was just like a really wild, kind of Wild West startup. Like, you know, I could go into horror stories about like HR stuff that, I can't believe even flew back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
The way people were treated, the way people were talked to, the way stress affected the way people talked to you and acted with you. How stress affects your coworkers and how,
Oh boy. Yeah.
they react to you. It was just, yeah, but I learned a lot of what not to do, but I learned
Yeah.
a lot of what to do, and
100%.
yeah, so that was a
It's a
really,
lot of really cool responsibility at a young age too, right?
it
Where you
was, yeah, it was,
that's
and it
it,
was,
it's impressive, and I think yeah, just listening to you describe it's really interesting because I think that's the biggest thing right now. I talk to other employers and say like you got to hire for potential, right? Like
yeah,
they
hmm
we don't all walk out of school with like zillion years of experience, obviously, right?
yeah,
But when you have those experiences, you build your own skill sets and tool
yeah,
belts, all that.
yeah, and yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, and yeah, it was some really cool opportunities. Like, I was able to like start producing stuff and come up with ideas for, web shows.
that's so cool.
And yeah, yeah. I went to the
So
Masters 3 times,
I
and
was
like,
gonna say, I was wondering how much.
like
Yeah,
my dad is a huge golf guy. Like, I'm not like I learned to golf when I was younger with him because he'd always say, only businessmen know how to, businessmen
I
golf.
heard that from my father too.
Yeah, that's just
Like,
that's such a dad line,
it's
like,
such a deadline, and I didn't love it. I'll be honest. Like I was like,
yeah, I don't,
sorry.
yeah, I don't, yeah. So,
I mean,
so
there's diehards in it. Let's be honest.
yeah, for sure.
I was
And
not that. Like we would play at work.
yeah,
It's
the one
net
thing I did learn about golf.
networking,
Yeah,
networking over.
networking. Well, that's the
Like,
thing is people like, I don't know how to golf. So if someone asks me to go golfing, I'm like, well, then what you do is you take a bad shot. You don't try to keep playing your shot. Like you just move on with everybody. If your ball
right,
goes in the woods, you don't try to hit it out of the woods.
right.
You hold everybody up. You just say, you know what? I'm gonna drop right here.
I'm
I was like,
good.
it's not competitive. Like if you're bad, they know you're bad, and they're competing amongst themselves. You kind of do your own thing and just talk.
It's so
Um,
true.
yeah. So my dad was always like, wow, you're going to the Masters. This is my dream. And, the one regret I have is not figuring out a way I could have got him like a ticket to go. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
some really cool opportunities that I look back on and I don't realize, I realize and don't realize sometimes how, not everyone has it.
Formative those times.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. Talk about a little bit what Bleacher Report. Tell us like a little bit more about what that was and
So, so Bleacher is funny because after I left Back Nine Network, I'd been dating my now wife for like 2 years, and we were like, let's go to New York City, and like let's move out there. And she got a job at she is a teacher, so she got a job in Fort Greene.
Nice.
Um, so we got a place, and I like literally went, and I had no money, no like no health insurance. Everything had stopped once I
Yeah.
left that full-time job. And um, so I started taking like uh PA jobs that were like,
Yeah.
$150 a day doing the worst work for the set, but I started meeting people. And to like kind of like zoom through that fast, I basically, a lot of my work, interestingly, uh, came from Craigslist. And I
Interesting.
know this might be like dated advice now because I don't think people are doing this as much, even though I still to this day go on Craigslist every once in a while and I search like editor, video editing.
Yeah.
But at the time I had met, um, I saw an ad on Craigslist for that someone needed an editor, and it was for this company, the Points guy. And
Oh,
this guy,
right. Yeah.
his name is Brian. I'm gonna blank on his name, but he's like very famous now in terms of what he does.
100%.
He
Yeah.
was famous back then. But the this guy Andrew, he was making this like Anthony Bourdain type show for Brian, called TPG TV, and he needed an editor. And that was like my first, like I was getting paid like really well, and
Hmm.
for being younger and just starting out. Um, and from that guy Andrew had a lot of connections a lot of friends and connections in the fashion world, which got me into like Vogue stuff and Art and Commerce, which is another big company. All these different
Yeah.
things. So basically, after kind of years of just like that, and like I found, my first feature job I found off Craigslist for this movie called Boy, BWOY, by this director John Young. He happened to live down the street from me in Brooklyn, so he hired me, even though I was new. He's just like, "You're right there. I can come over and edit with you. So like, I'll go with you." And I still have a relationship with him to this day. I literally last week I shot a film for him, a short film.
That's so cool.
Um, so
That
we've
brings home the
had
whole location, location, location.
location. Yeah, yeah, it was kind of luck in location,
Yeah.
but so after, I was freelancing from 2015 to late 2019. Um, and by that point, I'd like worked with a lot of different companies, as an editor, as an assistant editor. And like the way it works in the editing world is like the way people think it works is that you're an assistant editor and you kind of earn your keep by being an assistant and learning all these things. And I think that's great. And maybe that's, maybe in bigger companies, like I know for a fact my buddy George Lucas that I talked about earlier, he's at Pixar and he's
Okay.
an assistant editor there, and he had to climb that ladder. Um, and he actually started at Blue Sky, which was actually right over the border in Connecticut, and they did like the Ice Age films. They were
Yeah.
bought by Disney. Fox was bought by Disney, so he basically went to Pixar after that sold. All that to say, so that's how that works at those kind of companies. That you're an assistant and you work your way up.
So there's
But
a
I kind of
hierarchy in
there's
that.
a hierarchy, but like
There
when
is.
you're working for yourself, you're kind of like,
You're,
yeah, you just kind of have to say it. I'm an editor. Like I did take assistant editing jobs because um, I didn't have any background, like great background editing. Even with that huge, list of videos I did at Back Nine Network, I probably edited 2,000 videos, while I was there, like easily 2,000. I'm probably way off. It's probably 5,000 videos. I
mm,
probably shot 1,000, 2,000 videos. Um, Even with that like list of stuff, people were still like, okay, but you gotta like, you're in New York now. It's kind of like you're in New York now. Like there's a lot of other people trying to do what you're doing. And so, I kind of had to tell myself like, no, well, I'm an editor and this is the rate I need. This is the rate I want.
yeah.
Um, but taking jobs with agencies that were assistant editor jobs, um, was very important because I did learn a lot about kind of going back to my superpower of problem solving. Like literally assistant editors are the problem solvers. And like if the program's not working well, if your editing program has a problem or like the footage is being wonky, like the assistant editor is the one that uh fixes that. So so the editor is not losing time on the project. So that's all stuff that's like really important to
Yep.
learn. But also as a freelancer, I kind of am that role as well. Like when I edit it for someone like and I get a new client, I'm not sending my stuff to, an assistant saying, "Can you
Yeah.
get this ready for me?" I just do it.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and things are changing with AI and a lot of programs. Like a lot of that work is so easy now. Um, Not a
That's so
great
true.
thing, but not a bad
Yeah.
like not a bad thing, but not a great thing. But
Yeah.
it does save time for, the client. If the client is, the thing that matters, like it saves time and money for them. But unfortunately for, assistants,
Editors.
it's something that I could just do. Um, so anyways, the original question of Bleacher Report, I had met a man named Manny, and Manny worked at a company called Map Projects, and Map Projects is a very cool. When I say cool, like their stuff's very cool. Like a lot of the trends you see in editing now and like video work, like I think really it was like Map Projects. Like they just had such a cool roster of people there. Very young too, like a lot of young people.
Hmm.
At the time I was 29, 28, 29, like there were people like 23, 24 that were working on like, you know, Tom Ford's runway campaigns for,
Wow.
his company and working with, Rihanna and like, directing Rihanna's stuff at like 25, like really cool stuff.
Neat.
So Manny was the post supervisor there. And one day he's like, I'm not working there anymore. I got a job at this place called Bleacher Report. He's like, I'll try to get you in here as a freelancer. And he did. And one of the first jobs I did there was they needed a sizzle reel for their Playmaker, which was their branded content team within. They called themselves a branded content agency within Bleacher Report.
Okay.
So it was like the high, really like big clients, like Gatorade,
Yeah.
spending millions of dollars for a spot, with our roster of talent and people that we have connections to at Bleacher Report. Um, you know, we did like there's like when I first got there, was like a Reese's Puff cereal commercial with Travis Scott, like, like these big, like, not even sports stuff. It was just like commercial stuff sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, I put together a sizzle reel for them and they were like, "You're hired if you want a job here." Like, and that was it. That was my, like, they didn't even give me an interview. I did that freelance and he was like, "Do you want to work here full time?" And I was like, "Sure." I was like, well,
Amazing.
tell me what the numbers are. And the numbers were great, very good numbers. And I was like, I can't really pass this up. And luckily, I took that job. I was there for, their 50th and Broadway in the city.
Yeah.
And,
Very cool.
I was going there for like 4 or 5 months. And then the pandemic happened and I got to work
Mm.
from home from 2020 to 2023 when they laid us off because during that time, Bleacher Report was owned by, well, they were owned by AT&T, and T, and then
Hmm.
AT&T sold or something. I forget how it was in the beginning, but then Warner Media owned Turner Sports. Turner Sports owned,
Yeah.
Bleacher Report. Bleacher Report was like the social segment of, you know, the sports side of things. They have NBA TV, NBA Live, or NBA on TNT. I mean,
Yeah.
um, all the Turner networks. And Warner Media then they merged with Discovery
Yeah.
and they became Warner Brothers Discovery, and that was kind of it. I think there was a lot of redundancies. I think our team, especially, like, I don't know the inside of like what happened, but
Sure.
my guess is like if I'm selling content, I could go to you and say, "Hey, Brian, like I'm with, Playmaker, we're part of Bleacher Report, which is, instead they had a team of people saying, "Hi, I'm from Warner Brothers Discovery Sports, which is the new sports part of Warner Brothers Discovery."
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
everybody knows the Warner Brothers name.
Absolutely. Let
So
me
that's
ask
what
you,
I'm
can I ask you a
guessing
question
that.
about that? Because there's something here that I want to dig a little deeper. Because I was just talking to someone today about, you know, where we are right now, like we all know, like things are just chaotic, no
Yeah.
matter what you look at in the world. And there's, I'm very optimistic, but there's a lot of days where it's like, gosh, you just watch the TV and it's just, everything's blowing up, it feels like. But one of the realities is a lot of people I know, including myself, have experienced job loss, right? And,
Hmm.
I was talking to this person today who's a career coach who said, I always tell my clients, like, now it's like, just prepare for it because it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But when and of course I'm of a different generation than you, but when I kind of grew up, my dad worked the same place for 30 years, and I kind of always thought, well, if you work hard, put your head down, do the things, get involved, raise your hand for projects,
Hmm.
you'll be good. But did it come like I just want to ask you because I know that some of our listeners pretty much are even in like new roles at a company, a corporation, and a leadership program, and a bunch of them, they just cut the leadership program out. You think, wow,
Hmm.
these are the rising stars of an organization, and they're gone.
Yeah.
How did you, well, were you prepared for it? And if you were or weren't, what's your thoughts on it for someone that might be listening who's going through that same position you went, like how it felt and what you went through? How did you
Yeah.
get through it? Because,
I mean, I think the writing was on the wall for a little
yeah,
bit there. Like we kind of saw other teams being axed and like,
yeah,
they're like, there's like the rumors and the whispers and like,
yeah,
this person went to this meeting and heard this. And so like we kind of felt it coming. And even my manager, who is that guy, Manny,
yeah,
um, he kind of like, he actually was let go and he's an amazing
like a
person.
rock star. Yeah, it
Rock
doesn't,
star. Like he knows people, he knows how to wheel and deal. He knows how to he knew how to get deals for Bleacher, like
yeah,
get things done cheaper and hire talent and they got rid of him and he's like yeah. And that was kind of like oh, like
hmm
that wasn't just like a cost saving thing because if they
yeah,
knew any better, they just kind of got rid of three jobs with one person because he did so much. Um, so I kind of like had it felt it coming. And yeah, I mean, I guess I'm the right person to ask, but I'm also the wrong because I never wanted to get back into sports. I'm not a sports
okay,
person.
okay.
I really do not care about sports, to be honest.
Well,
I
that door closed, another one opened, in other words, for you, right?
yeah, I kind of was like, it was a great, I did not dislike it at all. Like I
Yeah.
enjoyed working on sports stuff. Because after a while they all kind of have their own rhythm, and then and there's a lot of it like was like documentary type stuff as well.
hmm
Um, And in my team, like they like sports, some of them, and they'll talk about it. But we were all like luckily we were all like the movie nerds, and so all of our like team meetings were like talking about what we had watched the night before, and then like after the half hour, it was 5 minutes of like, okay, here's some housekeeping. This is what we gotta do. Okay, see you later. Um, so
Yeah.
so I was kind of like ready to go. I was kind of ready for that next thing. Um, I would have liked to know what the next thing would have been.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where I went wrong, is I should have been looking for other things as soon as I heard that.
Yeah.
Um, but knowing that I had like a severance package coming and all this
Yeah.
stuff, I was kind of like, this was May 2023. I was like, summer vacation, baby. Like, this is
Yeah.
great. I'm getting
I
paid
hear
till
you.
September. Like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna relax. I'm not gonna like take much work, even though like I'm kind of like I have to work in a lot of ways. I'm kind of a workaholic about that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And I think it's that freelance mind where when I started off, it was like if I don't work, I'm not paying my rent, I'm not paying
Yeah.
for um so I was able to like relax, with my new daughter and do more stuff with my wife and have a good time. But I do look back and say like if I saw the writing on the wall, I should have been like looking for another full-time job or like at least, hey, freelance people that, clients that I had, like, guess who's back? I was
Yeah.
away, but I'm back. And I have all this, I did all this cool stuff at Bleacher Report with all these big companies, and I have all this more experience and you know, and the one other big thing I kind of want to add to this
Yeah.
is that I didn't want to take the full-time job at first because I was like, well, when am I going to have time to do like the stuff that I want to do on my own, like film stuff, like horror movie stuff. And it was complete opposite, I realized. It was like when I was freelance, I had to be working,
Yeah.
and if I wanted money to make something, it was like, okay, well, I got to make sure I take out my 30% for my freelance taxes, you know, because you're covering both sides of it now because you don't have a company paying the
Yep.
15 or so percent for, your social security and stuff. So, I got to make sure I take 30% out, and then I got to make sure I have money for rent and this. And, with a full-time job, it was like it wasn't always busy. I would like
Yeah.
talk to my dad or like my mom. I'd be like, "How's work?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's like not much going on. It's kind of slow." And he'd be like, well, it'll pick up." And I'm like, "Well, no, I don't want it to pick up." I'm like, "No,
Right.
no. What I'm trying to tell you is I'm like sitting
I
here in
need
my
my
office.
side hustle time.
Yeah, I'm working on my own stuff because
Right.
it's so slow at work, and I'm gonna get that paycheck either way. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, so I don't. It's not like freelance anymore. Like, if I'm not working, that's okay because I'm still gonna get a paycheck in 2 weeks."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's kind of like what I learned is like, it actually was great having one making a little more. I was probably making a little less money when all was said
Yeah.
and done, but that's also because they were matching my 401k. So I was, putting as much into my 401k as possible. Um, and they're taking my taxes out and like
Yeah.
all this stuff that you kind of take for granted. And like when I had my daughter was born, I got like an insane. I think I got like 12 weeks
Mhm.
paternity.
Yeah.
That's like through their company. And like my wife, who's a public servant, she's a teacher, and the mother did not get anywhere near that. And it was taken
It's
out of her,
crazy in a
it
way.
was
Yeah.
taken out of her sick day bank. And
Yeah.
like, so, as much as like sometimes I'm like, want to be like this like anti-capitalist person, I'm also like man, but they took care of me. Like
Yeah.
the
There's
country is not taking care of me like that. This
right.
this private company, this big conglomerate is making sure that I'm okay. And
Exactly.
so that was kind of like where like, you do that and then it's like, okay, I can do this stuff on the side because I have the money, you know, I can put the money aside. I can focus on things. I can, you know,
What
especially
would
in my
you what would you say to someone like, either your younger self, I know that question's always asked, but what would you say to someone who's listening to this podcast and they're 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 kind of want to dip their toe or they're in this world or they want to get in this world, like what advice would you have for someone wanting to get into, something like you've done with your career in movies and film and editing, you know,
um
any advice?
it's yeah, I mean it's tough. I mean, it's kind of like the maybe the obvious answer is that there's so many, routes you can take.
Yeah.
Um I know from a perspective of like filmmaking, um the kind of famous thing that this director, this indie director, Mark Duplass, has said is he's like, you can't wait for the cavalry to come. If you
Right.
have an idea, you can't wait for the cavalry because they're not going to show up. Like you can't sit there and be like, I have this idea and maybe I sent it to this person and they're going to give me millions of dollars. It's like that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Maybe it will work like that, but it's like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
Um, it's really you got to make your own stuff, and that's
Well, that's
that's
what I'm
really
hearing through this whole podcast. You like really took ownership of your career and the network worked for you too. Meeting
yeah,
people and
yeah,
building meaningful relationships,
yeah, and
obviously.
you need those. It's really so it's make your own stuff, whether that's writing, creating. If you want to be into the creative side of things, like narrative film or storytelling,
Hmm.
creating IP, creating your own intellectual property. So not just writing a screenplay,
Hmm.
write a short story because people don't have that's also like a time thing. Nobody has time anymore. So they're not going to read a 100-page script. Write like a one-page story. Right? Make a short film that's 1 minute long. And then that's why
So
someone
true.
like, J.K. Rowling, she has her IP and she gets paid for anything that Harry Potter does. Anything Harry Potter, she gets money from it.
Yeah.
And that's because she owns her IP. And with a screenplay, for instance, if you sell a screenplay, it's no longer yours. Now it's a studio's, and they're going to do whatever they want with it. They can even have someone rewrite it. So that was something I learned recently from my someone that's been successful is like nowadays the reason why people write short stories on Reddit, on Reddit there's a thing called no sleep and it's people that do horror stories. The reason that people pick up, make are successful because of that because someone from Blumhouse or another big horror
Sees it.
company goes on it and sees, wow, look at this one like 3 sentence short story this person just wrote. That could be a great, like, let me reach out and see if they have any more ideas or they can expand on this. So that's it really
Incredible.
is making a lot of things and whatever you can, however you can tell your idea and sell your idea or say your idea in the shortest amount of time, whether that's audio, visual, writing, you could do a podcast, you could do it, like a, what's the one that was very, very popular, like Serial or,
Yeah.
I know those are true
S-
stories, but like, they do
Seth
those.
Rogen.
Yeah. So, so that's the big thing, making your own stuff. And then the other thing is connections and people and talk and keeping. Don't burn any bridges. Don't leave a job or a company or a relationship in a bad way.
Yeah, very
If
true.
you're, rejection is part of it. I've done work where like I did something and I never heard back from the client or they like, oh, thanks for sending that over. Thanks. And then I never even see them like post the work and I like looking back, I'm like, oh, because it wasn't great. I didn't hit the mark and they were just being very kind,
Mm,
and like, and then that realization hits you where you're like, oh man, there are some people that like, I think I just didn't hit the mark with what they expected. But I think for most people, that is not what happens all the time. Most of the time you're going to hit the mark. Usually people are very easily impressed,
yep.
um, or you are always getting better. Your skills are always going to get better with whatever you do. Your
So what's
attitude.
next? What's next for you? Like, I know this film
Um,
2025. I know you probably can't talk about it, but
yeah,
other,
no, I mean, I can. It's really, I mean, what's next right now is like, I'm back freelancing after that.
yeah,
I've, I'm working on I'm actually in a better place than I used to be in freelancing is that I'm doing a lot more
good for you.
commercial work for bigger companies. One's going to be on like a, national TV. Actually, two of them might be for big companies that I can't say, but like
Yep, that's fine.
they're known companies, which is great. And, they pay very well. And, it's like, it's a very nice, it's very creative and it's, a lot of trust. Um, but on the personal side of things and my personal work, I recently shot a film called Won't Be Long Now. And that's really a true like DIY film that I did. I shot it all, literally anything you see on camera other than the visual effects, the music, the color work, and the sound mix. Everything else is me. Like literally, it was me in front of the camera acting, and it's like a 22-minute horror film that like the biggest compliment I've gotten is that it seems like a crew of 20 people worked on this film.
Wow.
And really, it was in
Congrats.
reality, it was again, your listeners can't see, but there's a camera behind me, and that's like the camera that I literally was just setting it up.
Yeah.
I don't know how to act. I don't think I know how to act, but I just went for it. And people haven't said anything bad about my acting. They said I did the job. So, and that was kind of like me just making it happen and trusting myself and, you know,
Yeah.
gotten into a couple of film festivals.
Very cool.
Found some great reviews online and like, I'm trying to see where that goes and where that takes me. I think it was kind of like almost like a, what do you want to call it? A test for myself to see what my skills were.
Sure.
Um, and then I'm trying to shoot a feature film, that I wrote based on locations I have available in Connecticut that, my father owns this really old cabin on the river up there. And we're originally from this really small, like industrial town. And so, I wrote this short story that's, very, ended up being a lot more personal than I expected it to be. And it is a lot about the horror of, mental illness and
Hmm.
the fear of, that being, which is a lot of horror now is really this like generational trauma.
Yeah.
It's kind of become a joke now that a lot of that's kind of like, oh, that's all people are talking about is generational trauma, but it's because it's something that people didn't talk about for a long time, and now it's
No, and it's important, like, and if you can express that through this medium of that and
yeah,
it can be, I imagine, like helpful.
Yeah, it's cathartic and it's,
Yeah.
and you don't want to make things preachy, but
No,
it's
but
also just making it an interesting story and you know, being honest. A lot of it was just being honest with myself about my memories and how I perceived things growing up
yeah,
and uh may have been affected by them.
yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that's what I'm trying to get funding for and start it next fall.
Wow. Well,
See.
I'm so glad that, and thank you for being on the podcast. I think it's so super interesting, like how you've navigated this whole world, and the stories you tell are like movies in themselves.
Thank you,
It's
thank
really
you.
no, it's really cool, and
Sorry, I hope I didn't ramble too much because
not at
sometimes when
all.
I'm
No, no,
going, I'm
no.
like,
I This is really, and I think for the listeners, there's a lot of creative young people trying to get their way or find their way, and sometimes they're hitting barriers and stuff, but I think the way you've described your experiences and working through some of those things and ups and
yeah,
downs and all that, I think it's super helpful. And I think that's really what's most important is that, we all get to where we are based on the experiences we have. And sometimes, and I don't mean this to sound, but like sometimes having the trauma knows then what are the good things as
yeah,
well, right?
exactly. And I mean, that's really what I would leave everyone with is my one piece of advice is like,
Sure.
at the end of the day, it's, um, actually my buddy said this. He's like, be a good hang. You're in a room with, especially as an editor, you're in a room with
Yeah.
me for a long time.
Yep.
If I'm not someone you want to hang out with, then that's like half the battle.
You're right.
Because so, if you can always learn skills,
Yep.
but it's very hard to change your attitude once you kind of have an attitude of the who you are. As a film guy, I'm very self-aware of like how I'm perceived,
Yep.
because I almost like imagine sometimes like what would the camera show right now if the camera was on me, the way I'm acting. That's literally how I
That's
think
a
about
good
it.
takeaway too, because a lot
I
of
really
us
that
are,
and
right?
yeah, sometimes we don't like think, you're kind of like, how could that person be acting like that? Or how can they and I'm like, maybe some people just aren't that as self-aware. And
Yeah,
I think that self-awareness is very important, and if you have, you know, stuff that you don't love about yourself, the way you act around people, um, work on it because it's a human thing. It's like it's not bad, it's not good. It's just that's how people are, and people have their own personalities. And if you're abrasive, try to recognize that you're abrasive because people don't want to hang out with someone that's like that. Someone doesn't. You can teach me skill. I can teach you skill, but I
right.
can't teach you how to be respectful when you're in a
That's
room full
right.
of important people.
That's
Um,
right.
so yeah, if you have a good attitude, don't worry about the skills as much because you'll learn the skills.
That's so key.
You have to learn the skills. You will. That's just how it works. You keep doing it, you're
Exactly.
gonna learn it.
You'll learn it. You'll learn it. Well, Billy, thank you so much for again joining me. It was great to catch up and see where you're going with things. And I know I saw you earlier back in your career and seeing where you're going now, and I can't wait to see what's next and check out these films that are coming out in the future. Hopefully,
Thank
you'll
you.
keep
Thank you,
me in the
Brian.
loop.
I will.
All
Thank you
right.
for having me on your podcast and
Well, thank you.
just talking through it. It's great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And for the listeners, if you like what you heard today, please share this podcast with your network or on Spotify or anywhere you get your podcasts. We also are at Coffee with Convery on Instagram, where you can find all of the podcasts for the past 4 years that are out there. This is Coffee with Convery, where we show you that success isn't about climbing the corporate ladder. Sometimes it's about building your own jungle gym. All right, for now, have a great day and thank you for joining.